Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast, Risen. I am so excited that you're here, and I really appreciate you stopping by and listening in. My name is Kathy, and I decided to create this podcast for many reasons, but one of those reasons being that I wanted to share my personal life experiences with you guys and just talk about life in general and share some tips that will hopefully resonate with you all and share the experiences that I've encountered in my life that I feel people definitely can connect with on a certain level. So, from acting to filmmaking to design, everything art related, everything life related, that will be the core focus of this podcast. So, with that being said, let's get started. I've been acting for well over 7 years. I started seriously acting as a sophomore in college, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it because it gives me a sense of freedom. It gives me a sense of just self assurance in a way, too, because I can basically pretend to be anything I want, but also stay true to the story that's being told. Um, so that's my acting experience on that side of things. Growing up, I always felt that I was very creatively oriented, um, specifically with acting. I remember I was like 4 years old and I would like set up two chairs and interview myself after watching a movie. I think the first movie I saw when I was really little was Chucky. Don't ask me why I was watching a horror film at like 4 years old or why my parents even let me watch that. It's pretty wild. But uh, then when I was 7 years old, I remember just reenacting episodes of That's So Raven in my room. So definitely the drive for acting has always been there. Definitely feel like I was born to act, as some might say. But yeah, in terms of design, I went to school for graphic design. I got a full scholarship to attend Northeastern, which was a total of $100,000, which is pretty insane. Basically, a dream come true to be there and to have the scholarship, to not only relieve the financial tension um, from my parents, but also just the dream of living in Boston for 4 years was really awesome. Um, and then in terms of design, I did a co-op at Northeastern when I was a junior to senior. So I was in my junior year when I did my co-op at Brigham and Women's Hospital. It was incredible. The people there were so friendly. I learned a lot while I was there. I was the web and graphic design coordinator, and I worked for two departments. I worked for the education department and the research department. So that was a lot of fun. I've held a lot of jobs throughout my life I've been working since I was 15, but design has always been part of that creative realm in my life. Acting, design, and filmmaking have always been there for me, and I think it's something that I want to continue to have as part of my journey, as a human being and as a creative. I wanted to talk about some acting tips. I wanted to share some acting tips with y'all aside from give you an introduction to who I am, why I'm doing this podcast, and so forth. So, if you're an actor and you're either just starting out or you want a good refresher as to what makes a good actor or what makes an authentic performance, I have 4 quick tips for you. Moving on in the podcast, in future episodes, I'll break down um, even more tips for you guys, but for now, I just wanted to do something pretty quick, but hopefully fruitful for y'all to understand and listen in. So the first acting tip I have is listening. Listening, it seems self-explanatory, but a lot of people, I feel, tend to overlook this tip. Because if you don't listen to the person that you're acting with, you start to lose this connection. And by losing the connection with the person you're acting with, you lose the momentum, and then you lose the energy, and then it shows on screen, even though you may not feel like you're giving a performance that's not authentic. It will show up on screen if you're detached from your scene partner, if you're detached from the story itself. So always keep an ear out, and pay close attention to the person that you're acting with and the people who are working on set with you. Usually what I try to do is, before I get on set for any production, I carefully study the script. I read it a couple of times. I try to get an understanding of the character's history, which is a great segue to acting tip number 2, understanding the character's history, the person who you're playing. So I think doing research before you start diving in to finding your character's voice and your character's mannerisms and all that, I think it's important to understand, who the character is, because it's hard to pretend to be the person you're acting if you don't have a solid ground or a solid idea of who they are, what their likes and dislikes are. You want to stay true to the character you're playing, and by doing so, you want to make sure that you're carefully studying how they would act in a certain situation if they were alone. You want to study how they would act if they are interacting with someone that they just met. How does this character walk? How does this character talk? Because at the end of the day, your character does not walk necessarily the same way that you as the actor would walk, right? So these are really important tips to keep in mind when you are doing your character analysis and you're doing your research. As the actor, you are becoming that person, and you need to be true to that person's persona and their way of life and their style and their choices. I don't always recommend method acting. That's something that we can kind of dive into in a later episode, but for some people it works, for some people it doesn't always. I have tried method acting before, and it has worked for me to some degree, but it really depends on what works best for you to get to that level of to get to the state of being so confident that other people don't even recognize who you are anymore, who you are as the person. An example I can give of really understanding the character's history, I'd say, is through Jacob Elordi, I think is his last name. I'm probably butchering his last name. He's the guy from Euphoria. But he did such a phenomenal job in playing Elvis Presley in the movie Priscilla that you could really tell he did his research. He did his research. His mannerisms were hands down. He had this tick throughout the film where he's like constantly tapping his foot on the ground, like shaking and just being nervous throughout some of the scenes, that I could just tell he was so into his character and he was so into the set. But you could tell that, he had either talked to the director, talked to Priscilla herself, the real life Priscilla, as to how her ex-husband would act in certain situations. So I think that's really important for any actor to do, is to know the character's history and really understand where they're coming from. and understand their wants and needs, which brings me to acting tip number 3. So when you're focused on your character's wants and needs, you also need to remember that when you are in a scene with a scene partner, your scene partner is always going to be way more important than you are. And the reason I say that, and that the reason why I was taught that when I was taking acting courses, is that you tend to deliver a more authentic performance when you lessen yourself, when you lower yourself to the person you're acting with, because they need to feel your emotion just as much as you need to feel their emotion. So by putting yourself as, I don't want to say making yourself less than, but I guess by staying grounded, by being humble, I think that's really, really going to drive a great performance from your part as the actor. And I think that's easier said than done. You know, you go into a set and you have all these things in your head of how you're going to do something, or you've already practiced your lines so many times, you know exactly how you're going to deliver something. You know, sometimes a director might throw a curveball at you, or might want you to do something different, or might change the scene completely on you at the last minute. You just have to be prepared and be ready for that, and for what's to come. So going back to that tip, understanding the character's needs, but also remembering that your scene partner is way more important than you, again, is really going to help drive home a true, authentic performance at the end of the day. Tip number 4 is showing emotion and knowing just how to act human. And acting human is probably one of the hardest things as an actor you have to do, or you have to learn how to do, because no one really ever teaches you how to be human. I saw this interview with Robert De Niro a while back on YouTube, or I think it was part of this variety segment that they were having, but one thing that he said as his own acting tip was, you know, when it comes to acting, actors think they have to do all these crazy mannerisms and stunts and you know, ways to deliver dialogue, but in reality they don't have to do anything. So it took me a second to understand what he was saying, because obviously as an actor you are doing something, you're working, you're getting to a certain level, you're trying to be authentic to the performance and to your character, and you're trying to bring a great story to life through your performance. But it took me a while to understand what he was saying, and what he was saying, or what I interpreted from what he said, was you want to act naturally as the character you're portraying, right? Because every human in this earth is different. Everyone has a different personality type. Everyone has a different way of saying things, of presenting themselves. So an example I can give of someone who acts naturally as her character, I would say, is Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada. She's a very high up person in the industry that Anne Hathaway just so happens to end up working for. And what Meryl Streep does is she does such a great job of being this really highly sophisticated character, and doing a great job with the person's mannerisms, with the way her character talks. But she does everything so naturally that you forget it's Meryl Streep. You know, you forget it's someone else pretending to be this director of design. And that's what I think Robert De Niro meant when he said, as an actor, you don't have to do anything. You do have to do something, but you always have to act naturally as that character. Another example I can give of of an actor who does a great job at acting naturally as their character is Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker. And what Joaquin does is he he creates this persona, this person who is the Joker that maybe we've never seen before in the Batman saga. I don't really follow Batman, to be honest, but the Joker is definitely a movie that I really really loved because of Joaquin Phoenix's authentic performance. And what Joaquin does in the Joker is that he enters this state of paranoia and insanity, and he does it so beautifully that again, you forget Joaquin Phoenix is playing the Joker. You forget he is playing a character because it's almost like he becomes one with the character. And a lot of the examples I'm giving you, Meryl Streep and The Devil Wears Prada and Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker, are that these people studied their characters. These people did their research before they even started analyzing the script or while they started analyzing the script. And it just goes to show how many layers there are to acting. It's not just, okay, I read the script and I'm done. No, it's, again, going back to the acting tips that I've mentioned. It goes back to listening. It goes back to understanding the character's history, understanding the character's needs. One thing I forgot to mention that I should have mentioned right after listening is being present, being in the moment, and knowing that your scene partner or whoever is on that set with you that's acting with you is 10 times, if not 100 times more important than your character is. And these are important tips to know when you're either going into acting or you need a refresher to help you truly deliver an authentic performance. So, thanks everyone. That is the end of episode 1, Intro to Risen, and some acting tips. I hope you all enjoyed the episode, and I really hope you continue to stick around for my brand new personal podcast. It means so much to me that you're here just listening in, and I always, always appreciate your support. Moving forward, starting January 2024, the podcast will be showcasing on the second and third Thursday of the month, so stick around for that. The next episode will be discussing dealing with anxiety and some coping mechanisms for dealing with anxiety. So I'm very excited to talk about that, and also really excited for what's in store. So stay tuned. If you want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram at Kathy Tangarife. I'm also on Facebook and on X. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.